Okay, and welcome to video number 16 in a series of setting Microsoft Flight Simulator up using external hardware. This time the Stream Deck. Axis and O's is the software that makes the bridge. And we're going to look at the main flight display, the MFD buttons. But before that, there's a little bit of tidying up that we need to do from the previous video. And I got surprised when I tested it how this inset button works here. If I show it to you just working as Microsoft have it, if I click on the insert, what that will do is it allows us to turn this insert off. And if I click on off, it actually does two things. It turns the insert off and it switches back to this profile, this menu here. And the work I did on the previous video was using the Stream Deck to create a series of profiles and working between them. So if I click on here, it's this insert, the inset button here, and if I click on there, what mine does is it will issue the command to make that happen, to turn that off and take us back to the main menu. But it won't change the menu here, it stays where it is, and I need to make this a multi-action so that it does both things. It switches it off and goes back to the main menu. So we just turn this into a multi-action. So move to multi-action, and I want it to switch profiles back to my main. And of course I need to update the icon. I hope you watched the previous video so you know what I'm doing. If you haven't, go watch it now. Okay, so we'll put the title in there, off. And we'll just test that. Okay, so when I press the off button, this should go back. And this should change here. Okay, so let's go off. And that's worked. We're still in sync. So okay, that was a little tidy up from yesterday. So today I want to look at this, the MFD. I've only really got to grips with the more intricate details of how the main flight display, the MFD, works. These buttons here actually change in response to which mode we're in. So as we click through using the outer knob here, you can see that we're looking at airport information, and that changes here. And we've got two different layouts, Info 1 and Info 2 layout. The next click across we don't really use, and the last one is the nearest. And this allows us to click into the airport mode, or if that's the airport I want to have a look at, I can then go to the runway and look at the runways. This is interesting. If I go to the frequency, I can use the outer knob here to move up and down. So if I wanted to pick up the localizer for the ILS, it's there, and I can enter that into the standby for nav1 by pressing enter. And that picks that up and puts that there straight away. And I can do the same for any of the comms radios. If I want to pick up the ATIS, when I press enter, that will put that into the standby of COM1. So that's pretty useful. But equally, if I turn that off, I can go for the nearest, not airport. Let's go back here. I can look at the nearest VOR. And one of my nearest ones that I use fairly frequently is Pole Hill. So if I move myself down to Pole Hill, ooh, that's interesting. That's doing some interesting things. There's Pole Hill. If I go to Pole Hill, I can click on the frequency button here, and again I can pick that up and have that straight into the nav1 standby. So there are some functions here that are quite useful. There aren't that many functions here, and we can't actually detect which mode we're in programmatically. That's a nice word, programmatically. So we can't program in a profile change. So all I'm going to do is go back to my Stream Deck software, and in the cockpit create a link to a folder, and I'll just have to deal with counting across. But I don't use it that frequently, so I think this will work fine for me. So it's going to be here. We'll create a folder, and I'll call it MFD, main flight display. In fact, I've got a graphic that I've been playing with, so we'll just drop a graphic in there so we know where we're going, a picture of the main flight display. And if we go in there, we're going to do pretty much what we did yesterday. So that's the back button to get out of the MFD, and we're just going to create an event. So it's one of the Axis and O's extensions from the plugin here. Create an event, and I'm actually going to label this. This is button number 1, and I've got a graphic. If you saw yesterday's video, I used a lot, so we'll just drop that into there, and we'll write an HTML event that we'll get from Axis and O's. So we'll add that, and we'll filter, and we're going to filter for the G1000, and it's the MFD. Yesterday we were filtering for the PFD, today it's the MFD, and I'm looking for the soft keys, and we'll just put soft key 1, right hand click, and drop that into place. So that's that one done. And what I'll do now is I'll just duplicate that. So Control C to copy, arrow key and paste, and move it all the way across. And then I'll do what I did yesterday and edit them, but I'll edit those while you go and do something else more useful, so you won't have to watch me just copying lots of buttons. But this is what I'm going to do on this one, and I'll just show you one. It's titled number 2. It's going to send a 2, and we'll submit that button. Okay, I'll edit that out and you can come back and see that later. Okay, and welcome back. So I've done the 12 buttons, and that's all I'm going to use there. So the text won't change, it'll only change on the screen. I've got some extra space, so what I'll do is I'll put those buttons on here. I've got them programming into my X-Touch Mini MIDI controller as well, but it's quite useful to have them on this screen when you're working with this screen here, so you can just do it at the touch of a button. So I want to have 6 events, so we'll do what we did before. We'll just drop an event on there, and then I can copy it and paste it there because that's quicker, and we'll just put the titles on. So that's the direct button. Sorry, that one here is the direct button, DIR, and this one here is the menu. Flight plan, procedures, the clear button, and we'll talk more about that in a while, because there's some interesting things we can do with that. And the last one there is the enter button. We'll stick that there, end. Okay, so on direct, let's use Axis and O's. On the direct button, and the filter should still be there. So I want direct to, right hand click on there, and it's an HTML event. Drop that in, Submit that. Next one will be the menu. Then the flight plan. If you're not a keyboard shortcut user, what I'm doing is I'm using Alt and Tab to switch between the applications. And having said that, I've forgotten which one I'm doing. I'm doing the flight plan. There it is. Okay. So hold down the Alt, dab the Tab, and it switches over for us. So it's a nice quick way of moving between applications. A lot of people don't seem to know their keyboard shortcuts. I'm old school. Round before the mouse was that popular. Procedure. Whoops. And if you press the wrong key, you're in trouble. So we'll copy that across. Okay. When I first started teaching, it was fairly common for students to nick the balls out of the bottom of the mice, mostly to disrupt the lesson. They don't really care about the balls very much. You see the clear button. But they knew they couldn't get away with it with some of us old school guys, because we could make them do the lesson using keyboard shortcuts if they damaged their mouse. So that was quite useful. Okay, let's put this one in. Now there's 2 clicks for the clear. The short click and the long click. The long click is quite useful because that clears everything back to default settings. But let's have the short click in here. So we'll right hand click and we'll copy that into here. Make sure it's HTML. I'll have to go back and check the other ones, make sure I remember to do that step. And we'll put the long click into here, the long press event. And that should work for us. So back here, there's the long click. And drop that in. And last one, use the enter. Right hand click on that and drop in the enter. Okay, we'll just double check everything. H long, procedure is an H, flight plan H. Yep, so they're all done. What I was also going to do while I'm here, just tidy up a little bit, I'm going to program this in. So I've got an emulation of pressing the cursor on the end here, which brings up the pointer, and then you can drive that arrow around so that it pushes us and we can scroll around the screen. So we're going to do that on my Stream Deck, and I'll use up, down, left, right, and I'll put the push here. So again, I've got events to drop in. And that'll be my up. So again, if we filter for that, it's the MFD, and it is a joystick. So we want joystick up, right hand click. there's my down. Incidentally, while we're there, we could put a graphic on this. It's got a bank of graphics that we can use, so we can open from the Stream Deck icon library, and let's do a search for down, and there's a down arrow. And let's put a corresponding up arrow in as well. And we'll do the left as well. I could probably just edit the text here to save me hunting for it. Let's go and be brave. Left. Right, and we'll search for a right here. And this one's just going to be push. And I will double check that on axis node just to make sure we've got it right. Joystick, push, and that is the one. And always need to double check to make sure that we press submit, especially when you're talking. It's very easy to forget that little gotcha. Every time. Goodness me, that's pretty poor. Right, let's go through them again and check them. Down. More haste, less speed, I think is the saying, isn't it? Up, down, right, left, push, hooray. And we'll just check those. That's the menu push, the flight plan push, the procedure push. Clear should have 2 buttons, it does, and enter. So it looks like everything's okay now. Okay, should we go and test it? Let's do a bit of tidying up. So we'll check that Direct 2 comes up, it does, and menu, yep, flight plan, procedure, and if we stop that flashing, we should be able to long press clear, and it takes us back. That was fine, and we'll trust the enter button, and we'll just have a quick check on these modes. I've got that programmed into my X-Touch Mini, so I should be able to go through these different modes, and that's working. And if I press this, we have to do some counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th one across, so number 5 should change this between info 1 and info 2. And it does, it's just, there it is. Okay, that's working fine. So it looks like we've got everything set up now for the main flight display. and I've just changed my view back. Press that again. There we are. Okay, so we've got the PFD, which we can enter and go back to the cockpit here, and I've got my main flight display and back there, so that's working. I can switch between all of them. Okay, so what's next? I think perhaps we'll have a crack at lighting next. What about this comms panel here? Maybe we'll have a go at that as well. Okay, there's lots of stuff we can still play with, but this is quite flyable now. We can actually get on with all the major functions are in, programmed everywhere. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. I'm not going to make any promises what it's going to be.